Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to what is looking like a beautiful, clear Boxing Day start. My name is Paul Billingham, Commodore here at the CYCA, and welcome to race day at the 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. This morning is a very quick affair. We're going to have our weather update very shortly from Gabriel Woodhouse from the Bureau, and then a couple of short messages. Hopefully everybody's signed in. If anyone's been missed off, I'll tell you at the end. So without further ado, Gabriel Woodhouse from the Bureau. Thank you.
Hang on, I just need to sort out the slides. Sorry about that, everyone. So today we're just going to have a quick weather update. We're looking at pretty similar conditions. So this is the synoptic chart this morning where we have a high over the Tasman Sea. We've got a trough that's just sort of over the eastern parts of Victoria and towards the northeast of Tasmania. That's going to move further east and bring a bit of a southerly change to the southern portion of the New South Wales coast this evening. It's going to be quickly washed out. And what we see over the coming days, so we're looking at Thursday and Friday here, we maintain that high pressure system over the Tasman Sea, which will mean we're going to have predominantly northerly winds. There's just going to be a little trough and front that will move across Tasmania during Saturday, where we'll have winds turning a little bit more westerly through the Bass Strait. And behind that, we'll see that high persisting over the Tasman and a little ridge developing across the Bass Strait. So this morning, as you can see, we're not looking at any smoke haze affecting the race start. We are going to see northerly winds increasing. So by race start, we're looking at northeasterly winds, about 10 to 15 knots. At 1 o'clock, looking closer to 15 knots, and once we get out of the heads, getting up to 20 knots. That's going to persist right down through most of New South Wales, further south through the Illawarra and the Batemans Bay area. Inshore, we could get up to about 25 knots during the late afternoon, but that's going to be ahead of the southerly change. So the change itself, we're moving up the coast over this afternoon. Looks as though we'll reach about Narooma by tonight, and generally about 10 to 15 knots with that change. Overnight, though, it's going to start to wash out and become quite weak and sort of variable with those winds through southern New South Wales and also through parts of the Bass Strait. Getting into Friday morning, we're looking at those northerly winds starting to develop again through New South Wales, through the Bass Strait and down towards Tasmania. We're mooring in an easterly flow. And once we get into Friday afternoon and evening, we really see those winds starting to increase further. That's just as the high reasserts its dominance. So we're looking at generally 15 to 25 knots along New South Wales down to Tasmania. Some places may locally reach up to 30 knots, so we'll see how that goes. Through the Bass Strait, it looks as though winds may be a little bit more easterly than north to northeasterly. So overnight, we see those winds continuing. Going into Saturday, though, this is when we start to have that trough that crosses Tasmania. So what we see here is the northerly winds persisting along the New South Wales coast, 15 to 25 knots. Some places possibly getting up to 30 knots, but that'll be more likely to be further offshore. Through the strait, we'll have a sort of northeasterly start, but then we'll see winds turning more west to southwesterly during the day. So it means that for the eastern parts of the Bass Strait, we could be sitting in some light and variable winds during Saturday. Near Tasmania, though, we're looking at north to northeasterly winds at first, and then they're going to shift more west to southwesterly, but later in the afternoon turning a little bit more southerly inshore. So a bit of an interesting one, and with that we are looking at the chance of a thunderstorm with that passage of the trough, mainly through the Bass Strait. By Saturday afternoon and evening, we can see that that trough and front have been moving through, and we're seeing more increasing in the wind near Tasmania, so more southeast to southwesterly winds. Further south, there'll be more southwesterly, though. Winds themselves through up to Hobart, they may turn a little bit more southeasterly during the afternoon, and it's possible that we could be getting up to 25 knots down near Tasmania. Getting into Sunday, in the wake of that system, we have that ridge starting to develop a little bit further. So through the Bass Strait and near Tasmania, we've got quite light and variable winds. At times there'll be anywhere between southwesterly to southeasterly, depending on where you are. And once we get into Sunday, we're now starting to see the approaching cold front that we were talking about 2 days ago. And so we'll see a return to north to northeasterly winds for most areas. And that will increase further on Monday ahead of this cold front. So the front itself, it looks as though on Monday morning we'll be seeing sort of northeasterly winds to start off with. Later in the morning they're going to be turning more northwesterly. And then later on Monday night or early Tuesday morning, we'll see winds shifting west to southwesterly. With this system, it looks as though we will see some thunderstorm activity behind the change in wind and some showers as well. Wind warnings are going to be quite likely with this system. Some guidance has it strengthening a little bit further, so while we are looking at potential strong wind warnings, there is a risk of some gale wind warnings as well as it passes Tasmania. In the lee of Tasmania though, once the winds turn more westerly, because of the topography, winds inshore can become quite light and variable, and it's very difficult to predict how that will behave. So just be wary of that if you are hugging the coastline very, very tightly. In the wake of that system on Tuesday, the front's going to move away quite quickly towards New Zealand. So what we'll see is a general easing of the winds during the day. Near Tasmania, winds will be more sort of south to southwesterly, and through the Bass Strait a little bit more westerly. We may still see some strong wind warnings, particularly through the Bass Strait, but the general trend is for those winds to start to ease. Later on Tuesday, they may turn a little bit more northeasterly towards the northeast of Tasmania. By Wednesday, we're looking at a ridge of high pressure extending across through the Bass Strait, and so we'll see westerly winds persisting for those that are taking a little bit longer. Further ahead, that ridge is pretty much staying. For those that are going to make the trip back north after that, it's a ridge, and so we'll look at fairly light winds through parts of the Bass Strait, but we are looking at that high pressure system remaining quite steady over the Tasman Sea, which means generally northerly winds along the New South Wales coast. Getting into Hobart, ahead of that cold front that's due on Monday, we're looking at temperatures increasing. So at the moment, you know, a pretty warm day getting in on Saturday or Sunday, but Monday will be the warmest of all. And we are looking at a few showers developing behind the trough on the weekend, and again showers and possible thunderstorms with the front on Monday. Looking at the water with the sea surface temperatures and currents, so this is a pretty similar picture to what we're looking at before, with a strong eddy that's offshore from Gabo Island, with another little weak eddy just to the west of that main eddy, which is quite weak, but there's another eddy southeast of Hobart. So if we flick from the sea surface temperatures, where we can see it's quite warm down to about Ulladulla, further south of about Gabo Island, we're seeing sea surface temperatures sort of 1 to 2 degrees cooler than usual for this time of year. So looking at the strength of the current, again we're looking at that eddy offshore from Gabo Island being quite strong, with getting up to about 2 to 2.5 knots in the sort of highest part of that southwards current. Tides, as you know, the low tide at the moment is in the early hours of the morning and again in the afternoon, and the high tide being mid-morning and again in the evening. For the smoke and haze situation, so there's quite a few fires that are burning. There's one particularly large fire down to the south of Jarvis Bay. So if you're inshore, you may see and experience some smoke haze with that. It'll be more likely that it'll be thicker during the overnight and early morning period if you're in that area. Through Victoria, there are some large fires through the ranges, through eastern parts of Victoria, which has been leading to some thicker smoke. It's been mostly kept over land, but when we see those northwesterly winds shifting westerly, you could see some smoke haze coming down across the Bass Strait, which may affect you. So this is what the satellite picture looked like yesterday afternoon in terms of the smoke haze. So we can see some light, sort of elevated, well above the surface smoke haze across southern New South Wales, and some thicker smoke for the fires burning over eastern Victoria. So just to summarise really quickly, we've got those northeasterly winds to start, and then we've got the generally northerly flow. We've got a weak southerly change that'll be moving along the New South Wales coast this afternoon and evening, Looks as though it's going to get up to Narooma, getting up to about 10 to 15 knots, and then is going to wash out quite quickly. Following this, there'll be that trough. They'll bring a little bit of a westerly wind shift through the Bass Strait on Saturday, ahead of a much stronger cold front that's expected to cross Tasmania and Southeast Australia during Monday. So I might leave it there, and best of luck, and I really look forward to seeing how you all go.
Thank you, Gabby. A few final notices. Could I ask you to recognise, if you're in the room, boat Audacious? They haven't signed on these boats, so is Audacious in the room? No. Anger Management? Black Sheep? Celestial? And Envy Scooters. Those skippers are here, and they need to sign in, otherwise we've got a slight issue. A number of you asked in the lead-up for a good email address if you wanted to communicate that way. If you want to write it down, the best email address to use is as follows: racecontrol, all one word, at ryct.org.au. That's racecontrol, all in lowercase, one word, at ryct.org.au. Other than that, as we go into the start zones today, we will have 2 or 3 significant vessels coming in off the end of A-arm from about 10:45 with limited manoeuvrability. So the 112 of you on the marina today, do feel free to get out there early. And just to remind you of the comments from Maritime when it comes to the exclusion zone, and particularly with any support vessels. The exclusion zone is in place from 12 o'clock, and support vessels without the Rolex green flag will be moved on. So can you make sure that you observe that? It's going to be a busy day today, guys, so whatever you can do to help us would be great. But do have a safe, fantastic, exciting race. I will do my very best to come and say hello to every one of you that gets into Hobart. So like I said last year, arrivals between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. are not great. But do go well, and yeah, we're very proud that you're part of this race, and good luck to all of you. Thank you very much.